The recent shelling around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has scared the world. The strikes that can lead to a possible catastrophe reminds everyone of the 1986 Chernobyl tragedy. The experts are suggesting that any harm to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant could lead to much worse consequences. While the world worries about a nuclear disaster, Ukraine and Russia, however, have been busy trading charges. Both the neighbors have been accusing each other of striking the plant, calling for new sanctions. Kiev accused Moscow of blackmailing the world with its actions at Europe's largest nuclear plant.
Russia does not stop its blackmail actions at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and around it. Provocative shelling of the nuclear plant's territory continues. Under the cover of the station, the occupiers are shelling the nearby towns and communities. If a terrorist state allows itself to completely ignore the demands of the international community, and even more so on such a sensitive topic, then this clearly indicates the need for immediate action.
However, Russia-installed officials near the site claimed that about 25 heavy artillery strikes from US-made M777 howitzers had hit near the nuclear plant and the surrounding residential areas on Monday. Russia further rubbished accusations of planning to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, adding that there was no need for a nuclear attack.
На этом фоне в средствах массовой информации распространяются домыслы о якобы готовящемся применении в ходе специальной военной операции российского тактического ядерного оружия, либо о готовности применить химическое оружие. Все эти информационные вбросы являются абсолютной ложью.
The battle around a nuclear power plant have raised alarm. The United Nations and its nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, have warned the world that batting for the fight around Zaporizhzhia should stop. The IAEA has further sought access to the nuclear plant to assess the situation, a request which was earlier accepted by Moscow. However, it later said that it would be too dangerous for any IAEA mission to travel through the capital Kiev to inspect the plant. Amid fears of a nuclear disaster, the UN chief Antonio Guterres will meet with the leaders of Ukraine and Turkey this week, as Kiev reported an unprecedented cyber attack on its nuclear energy agency's website.
At the invitation of President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, the Secretary General will be in Lviv on Thursday to attend a trilateral meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and the Ukrainian leader.
Ukraine's nuclear operator has said that Tuesday's attack was the most powerful cyber attack against a website since the start of the Russian invasion and conducted from Russian territory. The nuclear operator further said that Russian Popular Cyber Army Group used more than 7 million internet bots to attack the website for 3 hours. However, the assault did not have a considerable impact on the work of the website. Ukraine remains deeply scarred by the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear catastrophe that occurred after a Soviet-era reactor exploded and streamed radiation into the atmosphere in the country's north. The attacks on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine and its takeover by Russian troops brings dark echoes from the past for those who have close links to Chernobyl. And for more insights, our correspondent Rosie Burchard is now joining us live from Brussels. Rosie, thanks for joining us. Now, the world is worrying about a nuclear disaster. Ukraine and Russia seem to be trading charges. Is Europe at all concerned about what lies ahead?
This is a cloud looming over Europe, this threat of a nuclear disaster, these fears of a nuclear disaster, which are very much present in people's minds here. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been trying to explain this sense of urgency which he feels is associated with this situation to his European counterparts. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky recently addressed a group of European defence ministers, and he evoked that historical chaos, that historical drama at the Chernobyl nuclear plant. He evoked that to try and convince them to take further action, because Ukraine is calling on European countries to toughen sanctions on Moscow, so to tighten the screws further on the Kremlin's ability to finance this war. Now, remember, the European Union has already imposed successive rounds of sanctions on Moscow, including banning the imports of most Russian oil deliveries, also banning imports of Russian coal. But Ukraine would like to see those sanctions go further still. For example, Kiev has been calling on the EU to ban all Russian tourism, so to put an end to distributing Russian tourist visas, and that is something which is dividing EU countries. While some nations, including Finland, are in favour of this idea, others, including Germany, have spoken out against it. All the while, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of nuclear blackmail regarding those events unfolding around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine.
Right. But Rosie, the topic of sanctions has been controversial and has been debated. Sanctions haven't really succeeded in deterring Russian aggression. So how will they work at this stage in the war?
Well, this is also a big source of debate here in Europe, and especially here in Brussels. Now, one EU leader, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has spoken out against the policy of sanctions as a whole. He says they do not appear to be working and that they're inflicting more harm on European economies than on Russia's economy. To counter that kind of narrative, officials in the building behind me in the European Commission have been putting out statistics about Russia's economy and how they see the sanctions are taking effect. So, for example, shrinking Russia's economy and making it, we've seen lots of businesses departing from Russia, for example. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in order to try and convince these EU leaders to step further, has been really trying to drive home just the gravity of this situation. He reminded ministers when he last briefed them that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant is the biggest in Europe and that it's one of the biggest of its kind in the world. And that's, in a sense, him really there trying to persuade them of the gravity and what's at stake here. Though, of course, Russia and Ukraine are blaming each other for these attacks and this shelling around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. I can recall the International Atomic Energy Chief briefed EU parliamentarians over the past month when, for example, early in the war there was fighting a couple of hundred metres away from that Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. At that time, the IAEA boss said that kind of fighting so near to a nuclear facility was unthinkable. And of course, since then we've seen more shelling around the plant just over the last few days, and that is really raising concerns here in Europe and of course on the ground in Ukraine.
Right, Rosie, thanks so much for all those updates, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.